Hi, I'm Justin Boyd.
I'm Brittany Pacheco.
Tristan Jones.
Marcy Gonzalez.
And we are the Watchers in the Basement.
Welcome to the Watchers in the Basement. Welcome to a special edition of the Watchers in the Basement. We are doing a instant reaction pod to the season finale of The Last of Us, the HBO series, episode 9, episode title, Look for the Light. And we'll do like we always do. Let's start off with overall thoughts. Brittany, overall thoughts about the season finale of The Last of Us.
Man, it was hitting you in all directions with like different emotions, and you see the change within Joel and Ellie overall as their characters have just experienced this whole season. And I really appreciated the recap before getting into this finale, because again, you see all the trauma that Joel went through, losing his daughter, leading up to this moment where we see him with Ellie. They're still traveling. And yeah, it was a great episode. I mean, we're going to talk more in depth, of course, but I really did enjoy this episode. And it was the shortest episode in this season, which I thought that was very unusual given it's a finale. But yeah, like I think it paced well. It told a great story in the short amount of time that we were given. And Yesenia here in the chat, she says passing the Kleenex box. Yeah. Yeah, that I think was needed for our colleague over here, Tristan. What were your thoughts on this finale?
The boys did the thing. Right? They did the thing. Like they capped this season off. I think this is, one of the more prolific first debut seasons of a television series that I've ever seen. It's up there for me. Like, I mean, again, it already had me kind of attached and connected through the game, but I was wondering, would I be able to feel like the same emotions that I felt, finishing the first game? And it was only heightened by what we saw tonight. But they did the thing, man. They landed the plane perfectly, in my opinion. I love this finale. I can't wait to talk about it. Marcy.
I really enjoyed it too. Like Brittany, it definitely felt short because it was one of the shortest, but I don't think in a bad way. I definitely think they could have stretched it out more and given us a little bit more, and I think it would have been okay. But I think if they would have stretched it out too long, it would have been overboard. So I think it was, just about the right length. I liked that in episode 1, which I rewatched again today to kind of prepare. We learn backstory about Joel, right? And like his trauma and where that started. And now in the last episode of the season, we get to see Ellie's beginnings, literal beginnings, how she came into this world, how she came to, be put into Fedra's care. So it was nice to see just more about Ellie, even though it's a just super sad story all around. And I was expecting to be a little bit sadder. I wasn't as sad as I was expecting, because I think in the end, the choice that Joel makes, I don't think there's a right or a wrong choice. I think it's one of those things where it could go either way. So I definitely liked that it was written that way. So you could have people on either side be arguing that like, no, this was the right thing to do. So I really like that.
Yeah, this show, it was like a season full of like, award-worthy episodes. I mean, there's like at least 3 or 4 episodes, like off the top of my head, 3, 5, 7, even 8 that are just amazing episodes of TV. And for this finale to be as strong as it is really impressive by this show. And the way that the season finale plays out, this could have been a series finale. You know what I mean? Like if the way the episode, and we're gonna go into all that. But if they decided like we're just gonna do a one-off that's gonna be the best 9 episodes of TV ever, like they could have pulled it off. Like that's what's so like it's so well done. I mean, with the decision that Joel makes, choosing Ellie over the world, like I mean, yeah, I want more, and I'm interested to see where it goes. But this could have been the finale, and like what a walk off grand slam that would be if you just walk away like that. So what a show.
And you just
Let's-
leave people with that question.
Yeah,
Like,
no,
the first conversation my wife and I had,
Mhm.
and I've been wanting to ask her this for 3 years, honestly, but like, what would you do in that situation?
Yeah.
Like, would you save the child, the kid, you know, or would you save humanity? And like that, you said there's no right or wrong answer. I think both answers are simultaneously right and wrong at the same time. Like you can make a serious case for both, and that's the beauty in that finale and just the story as a whole. Yeah, it's amazing.
To go back to what you said earlier, Justin, about if this finale could have been like a series finale and we only had 9 episodes, I would have wanted longer episodes, a little bit more detailed, a little bit more action, especially seeing maybe more clickers. This is coming from someone who doesn't like the clickers and the bloaters. Okay. Like if you're going to stretch it out for any reason and it be a single season or a single series, then you got to add more to it. You got to make it like the length of BBC Sherlock, an hour and a half episodes, in my personal opinion.
But I think the genius of the show is like, let's say this show wasn't a massive hit, which of course it is. Like if this show just ended like this, it's a perfect ending. Like even if this show wasn't a commercial success or whatever, it could have ended and you're like, wow, they told a story in one season. Whereas a lot of shows, yeah, they have an idea of what they want to do with the first season, but like this show wrapped up the season perfectly and potentially could have wrapped up the series. And I think that was just, to me, that adds to like the level of how great this show is, because we're always talking about now about how everything's like a running story, like with the MCU, and people don't like, oh, I've got to watch, before I see Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, I've got to watch 30 other movies and all these TV shows. And it's like, this is a self-contained story in this season. And sure, it's going to go on because obviously there's another game and there's definitely room to play with, but if it didn't have to, and it's awesome the way it is. I mean, I can't wait for season 2, whenever that might be, but wow, what a first season this was. And as Marcy referenced, we get to see the beginning of Ellie. We get to see the birth of Ellie and unfortunately the death of her mom. That's how the episode opens. And what a way to start the episode. Because in episode 8, we got Troy Baker, who is the voice of Joel in the video game series. And in episode 9, we get Ashley Johnson, who of course is the voice of Ellie in the video game series. She gets to play Ellie's mom, which that's pretty cool to like have the person who's most associated with Ellie to then in the live, adaptation play her mother. Tristan, I'll go to you first. What did you think about Ashley Johnson playing Anna, Ellie's mom?
It was something I knew about, kind of had been anticipating, especially when, we talked about it last part about with the preview for this week's episode. So I kind of alluded to it, like, hey, we saw some people that we definitely may see in the finale. So I had a very good inkling that we would see Ellie being born or Ellie as a baby, because we're going to meet her through her mother. Ashley Johnson, I mean, one, like, her voice is obviously so familiar because she's the voice of Ellie in the game. And it's like a perfect, full circle moment. Her, being Ellie and becoming this iconic character. Somebody, like, again, I felt I knew pretty well before the show even started. Seeing that kind of transferred into like Bella Ramsey is, in a way, a mind fuck, because it's like you build this connection with the person in the game and the way they look and the voice and stuff like that. And it gets, basically transferred to this new person who you develop this new, other type of connection and emotional attachment to. And it's, for me personally, having the connection I have with the game and the show, it is even more cathartic seeing, Ashley Johnson die in this episode and the potential of like Bella Ramsey die. Like, it's like you're kind of seeing Ellie die twice in a certain way. Mm-hmm. So some quantum alien shit, but it is. I thought Ashley Johnson continued the tradition of what we've seen so far this season of the show being able to place a character in a particular moment, even for that, just that one episode, or really for, in the case of, Ashley Johnson, 2 scenes.
Right.
And make us fall in love with that character and be able to feel something with that inevitable loss of that character. And she did a great job. To me, her character was so important because we get to see why Ellie is the way that she is. Like, she's not this tough and this resilient and persistent in a vacuum. Like, this comes directly from her mother and the circumstances her mother went through. And her mother recognizes that, right? And Anna, she recognizes herself and this toughness in Ellie right away. And so that's kudos to Ashley Johnson and her ultimate, like, her relationship with the series, right? And I think that goes into her performance, and she did an amazing job.
Yeah, and Anna, played by Ashley Johnson, in the scene you're talking about, she's very pregnant. She's running through the woods or whatever. She finds this abandoned home. Of course, there's a clicker there, and she has to kill the clicker, obviously, to save herself and their baby. And then as she's killing the clicker, or killing the infected person or whatever, she gives birth to Ellie. So Ellie's born in the world, to a mother who's fighting to stay alive. Unfortunately, she gets bit in the exchange with the infected. And Brittany, what were you thinking about how we see Ellie come into the world? We see her mom right away notice that she's got a bite mark on her leg, and it's like her mom's not long for this world.
I mean, talk about adrenaline just coursing through Anna's body and being bitten in the process, as she's giving birth to Ellie, or just like right after she gave birth to Ellie, and not feel the contractions to, give birth. I'm not a mom. I hear, of course, stories from friends who are moms and say the pain is just excruciating, but you have something that you're dealing with literally in your face. And what I thought was great is we see that pocket knife that Ellie carries around. The origin of that pocket knife comes from Anna, her mother, and it's just passed down to her. And like mother, like daughter, Ellie, we see, uses it to kill a clicker as well. And so I think just those parallels was great. Like Tristan's talked about throughout this time we've been reviewing the show, you see like little bits here and there in previous episodes, and then it pays off in the end ultimately. So with Ellie being born in the midst of a clicker attack, that she's going to be a fighter, and how she's immune now makes sense, because whatever was coursing through her mother passed through the umbilical cord, passed to Ellie, and that is why Ellie is special. And I think when Anna was trying to tell Marlene when she's found that she cut the cord before she was bit, and it's like, I understand why. As a parent, you want to protect your child, and you want to give it a life beyond whatever you could provide. And that had to have been tough. Obviously, it had to have been tough for Anna to willingly give up her child before she knew she was going to lose her mind and become an infected, and tell her best friend Marlene, whom she's known all her life, you take my baby, you find someone who can raise her, and you kill me. Marcy, what did you think about that exchange?
I mean, that was hardcore. Again, she's just not only had to run for her life against a clicker, she's had to kill them, realize that she's been infected, actually give birth. So that's a lot, like you said, a lot of adrenaline, a lot of emotions, just a lot to go through for one human being, I think. And then to realize, like, I'm going to die. My kid has to find someone else to take care of her. I thought that was just super, super hardcore. I'm glad Marlene was there to at least put Anna at ease. I think if she would have been by herself, that might have been more difficult, because then she knew she was going to turn, Ellie was going to die, because there would be nobody to take care of her or feed her, or another infected might come in and just kill Ellie. So
She
that
would've
was
killed
very
Ellie.
hard to watch. And it was definitely hard to watch Marlene having to process, like, okay, yes, I don't want to kill you, but I know that this is what we have to do. Otherwise, we could put other people at risk. So I didn't think Marlene was going to do it. I thought maybe she was going to ask one of the guys that was in there with her to maybe do it for her. But no, I think she, in the end, realized that it has to be me. So it was definitely hard to kind of like watch that go down, even though we know that that might be like the best thing to do. It's still heartbreaking.
Mm-hmm. And I'm gonna kind of jump ahead. Sorry, Justin, if this like screws up your plans, but with we get the real story from Ellie at the end. She tells Joel, back in Kansas City, you asked me if I've ever shot anyone before, and I told you I have. And she goes into the story about Riley. We saw that beautiful episode with Riley and what happened to both of them when they both got bit. And Ellie admits to having to kill Riley when she lost her mind, which I figured ahead of time. Like I figured she had to have she just had to have killed Riley. Like that's why it hurts her so. That's why she wasn't so forthcoming about telling the story of what really happened at the mall. And the kind of odd parallel between Anna and Marlene's relationship and Riley and Ellie's relationship. The opposite had to kill the other because of being bitten. And I just think, you live in a pandemic and the struggle is still very real, obviously. And damn, Ellie was, I say doomed from the start in some ways because she was just going to live a tough life no matter what was going to be thrown at her.
Yeah, and talk about the parallels. There's also the parallel of how, Anna, she lied to Marlene about, oh yeah, I cut the cord before I was bitten, which obviously that's not true.
Yeah, apple tree.
Well, no, then later on in the episode, Joel, in order to protect Ellie, to save her life, he has to lie too. Although, I mean, I'm pretty sure we all know that Ellie knows he's lying, but she just has to go, okay, that's fine. I mean, I'm alive. So, but we'll get to that. We'll get to that here in a second. Let's talk about Marlene a little bit because this is this is her final episode, I would guess, given what happens. We briefly got to see her earlier in the season, and this actress, Meryl Dandridge, plays Marlene, and she is the rare person who played the same role in the video game as she played in the show. So obviously, that's something else that's really cool about this show is that to be able to take the people who worked on the games and put them in key roles. To me, it just makes the show even more special. And Marlene had a big part in this episode. Tristan, what did you think about Marlene in this episode and basically her arc, and how does it compare to the game?
So the opening scene of this finale is not in the game. We don't.
Right.
The only inkling that we have about Marlene and her relationship with Ellie is in the first game where Joel finds a note from Anna. And it's basically talking about her relationship with Marlene and how, she wants Marlene to keep Ellie safe. So that's how we know that Marlene has a previous relationship with Ellie's mother. But this scene is nowhere. This was completely added for this finale. So it was great to get that backstory of like how Marlene like knows Ellie and Ellie's mother and like what's the connection there. Like Marcy, I did a rewatch of the entire season this morning, starting from this morning. And you get to see like some of these breadcrumbs that are laid out there. Going back to, Brittany talking about episode 7, where we, intimated whether Ellie had to pull the trigger on Riley, and those breadcrumbs are there in the premiere as well. Marlene has a very interesting, role in this story because she sets things in motion by, choosing Joel to take Ellie to transport Ellie in the first place, and she does that because she knows that Joel is emotionless in making sure that a mission is accomplished. Like, he's ruthless in that pursuit. Like, that's his reputation. So, irony, right? Like, the things that you set in motion usually are the things that lead to your demise. And what this episode is a culmination of is that the building of that trust and that bond between Joel and Ellie. So it just, again, it's a full circle moment. Like, Marlene is tasked with putting Ellie in the right positions, putting her in the right places, putting her in the federal school so she can learn these skills that she would need to be a survivor, putting her with Joel because he's a survivalist and he's the right person to protect her through that. And ultimately that coming crashing down at the end is Shakespearean, like, but Marlene, she makes some tough decisions. Like, we get to learn very quickly that her and Anna are, lifelong friends, and then very quickly to see how that lifelong friendship pays off. One, in Marlene taking on that responsibility of being a guardian. So, even from far away for Ellie, but having to end Anna's life, right? Like that, again, that's the beauty of the writing, is that we can find out something really quickly and then see it kind of pay off that quickly and still get the same emotional, cathartic experience. So, Marlene, she again, one of the central figures in the story, even if we only see her really for 2 episodes, but she makes it count, both times. And again, that goes back to like you said, Justin, having these characters, these actors come in and either play the same character or play like another important character in the story that moves it forward. Like, those performances are built off their love of being a part of that game, and that it speaks to like the larger story and the writing and the creative like guide direction that the showrunners have taken, and it's paid off.
Yeah, no doubt about that. So after the opening scene and we see Anna with Marlene, we flash back to the present, or return to the present, and Ellie is not herself. She has this like kind of like dazed, glazed kind of look on her face. She's not listening to what Joel's saying, and Joel is almost doing like an Ellie impression from earlier in the season where, he's, being super nice to her, and he's like trying to make her laugh or trying to like, engage in conversation. He's found this game. He's like, maybe you could beat me at this game. And
He's a chatty Cathy.
yeah, he found a can of ravioli. They're psyched for dinner. So I thought it was interesting in that, where again we see this whole episode, there's been parallels, and there's been, you're seeing like a reflection of one character to another character. And I thought this was another example of that, where Joel is basically Ellie from the beginning of the season, and she's kind of become him after what happened in episode 8.
I also think it's just one of those things where, as a person, as a friend, when someone that you really care about has gone through something really traumatic and they're not themselves, like they're kept to themselves, being more introvert than normal, you kind of want to keep them talking or make them feel like they're not alone. And in many ways, it's a good and a bad thing at times. But for Joel, it's like he's really channeled his inner dad. Like, he, in the previous episode, called Ellie baby girl. She's no longer cargo to him. She is, for all intents and purposes, his ward, his child, if you will, right? And he's doing the parent-like thing, and that is to get your child to talk, get them engaged, and what have you. But that flip is it's really sad to see that, because Ellie is just not as engaging as she once was. Like you're saying, Justin, you see Joel kind of channel his inner Ellie, and Ellie is just being very disassociative with him. She kind of tries to, oh yeah, like, sure, we can do this, or yeah, I'd like to learn how to play guitar, like, but her heart's not really in it. You can see that. And for someone as young as she is, who went through everything she went through with David, I realize I don't like that name anymore. I would probably act the same way. Like that's really traumatic for Ellie to have experienced.
Yeah, you mentioned the guitar. That I think that's a reference to what we'll get in the future, as far as Joel uh, playing the guitar, or Ellie eventually playing the guitar. So, just kind of a spoiler for, or a little like a Easter egg for what's to come.
Tristan's nodding his head. I think you're right. Or now he's
So,
not doing anything. We
yeah.
don't know anymore.
Oh no, it's absolutely, he said, going forward. And that's pulled exactly from the game where Joel, at the end of, like, basically that's something that parallels the end of game one, where he, makes these promises, a bunch of stuff. There's a lot of hopeful things before we get to the hospital in the game. That mirrors this episode where Joel and Ellie make all these plans, like, hey, we're gonna go here, we're gonna do this, I'm gonna teach you how to play guitar, I'm gonna teach you how to hunt and shoot and all these things, and really ominous towards what we see towards the end.
So the next thing in the episode, and I wouldn't expect to see this anyway, but especially in a post-apocalyptic world, I wouldn't expect to find a giraffe just hanging out. So, Marcy, what do you think about the giraffe scene? And it seemed like it kind of brings Ellie out of her funk, or out of her shell.
Yeah, I love it. I loved it. I haven't played the game, so I didn't know if that was something that was going to come up. But, once we see her start going up the stairs and she's all excited, and that's the first time we got some other type of emotion from her other than just kind of like a blank stare and just kind of being emotionless. So I'm like, okay, what are we going to see? It's probably just going to be like another cool view or something, or maybe she found like this cool stash of like food or clothes or just something really awesome for them to take on their journey. And then like you see this beautiful view and then there's a giraffe there. So I was like, okay, that was unexpected. Being an animal lover, I really loved the scene, and I love that it was able to pull Ellie back outside, back out of her shell, and just kind of help her see that, yes, you've gone through like some really, really traumatic stuff, but you can still find joy even in like little things, unexpected things. I'm sure she never thought she would see a giraffe in the middle of just, I guess this is still Colorado, right?
No, they've made it to Salt Lake City at this point.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, but still, I think maybe that was the last thing she was expecting to see. And then I really loved seeing Joel's reaction to her reaction to the giraffe. I think he felt some sort of relief, maybe that she was at least engaging with the giraffe. She was smiling for the first time, maybe in days or weeks, however long it had been since they had been with David and his group. So that was just a really, really sweet scene that I'm glad we had, because then we have like lots of like just really hard scenes to watch. So it was a nice little bit of sweetness in between this really hard episode to watch.
And Tristan, the giraffe scene, that's straight from the game, right?
Yeah, completely from the game. Like, again, you love it. I loved it because it's this another reminder of like how beautiful nature is when it's untouched by man. It's like,
right.
You see like the grass and stuff flowing over these buildings. Like, I think that's another subtle metaphor that the show is doing, is like, when humans are not around to like overbuild or to knock down trees and stuff like that. I can't tell you how many new neighborhoods are popping up like around our subdivision, like every day. Like, you see all these trees and forests, and not forests, but like, many forests around where we live, and like week by week, it's just homes and stuff, which, great innovation, but like the naturistic part of like our world is kind of being overshadowed. And what the show is telling us is like, hey, when people kill each other off, which we tend to do, nature's taking shape and taking its place. So I loved it, and for the same reasons Marcy mentioned, like, she went through something really traumatic, and I think Ellie is searching for one meaning, right, and like her purpose in life. and two, just kind of looking for any type of light, you know, through all the darkness that she's gone through. And Joel does not know how to, you know, communicate that he understands the pain that she's going through. And so like all he can do is, you know, just be annoying and ask these questions. So it's funny to see, you know, again, like how their relationship has shifted from, you know, just being like you said, cargo, right? And now it's like, hey, not only just that, I don't just care about you on the surface, but I care about what you're feeling and stuff. And that's like the next level of care, right? And then we see Joel go further with that care, but we'll talk about that as well. But yeah, that scene is directly from the game. Beautiful scene in the game, and you know, I'm glad they were able to like parallel that in the show.
And it's in this moment that Joel says to Ellie, like, "Hey, look, we don't have to do this. We can go back to Wyoming. We can go find Tommy, and we can just hang out. Like, we can just live out the rest of our life. We don't have to go to this hospital." But Ellie insists that she's like, "No, like, you know, there's no halfway in this. Like, we had to finish what we started." And you know, she's very resolute in what they need to do. Whereas you see, which obviously leads to later on, you can see Joel, like, I don't know that he knows what's going to happen to Ellie at this facility, but I think he has a good idea. Would you agree, Brittany?
I think so. And let me be the first to say I was a little surprised that it was Joe. Golly, I watched two shows that have like very similar names. I'm sorry. Okay. Joel to be the one to say to Ellie, "Hey, we don't have to do this. You know, like we can just forget about this. We can go back to Wyoming where Tommy is. We can go live a life and what have you. Like you don't have to do this." Because in our previous pod, if y'all missed it, which I don't see why you did, because this has been a great pod to talk about, I suggested that maybe Ellie was going to be the one who was wanting to pull back from this journey, not go to Salt Lake City, not go to the hospital, and be the savior of the world, if you will. I was very surprised to see that it was Joel who was saying, "You don't have to do this," like without saying, "Don't do this." But for her to stand firm in her convictions to say, "No, like what was the point of going through everything that we've gone through to just give up?" And for someone who's 14, who doesn't know what life was like pre-pandemic, I was very impressed. I admire Ellie. I told y'all in the last pod, she's like my hero at this point. And I was very impressed. I applaud her for that. But with Joel to say that, I think for him, it's kind of like, I couldn't save my daughter, and I'm going to do whatever it takes to save Ellie. And if it means talking her out of the thing that we've set out to do, I channel Captain America here, whatever it takes. So yeah, I was genuinely surprised that Joel was the one who verbalized that.
I mean, if you think Ellie's been told from the jump that she was special, right? Like that's the reason why she wasn't shot in the mall, right? According to Marlene, like she's special and know it. And she's been prepped to do something special. So it wasn't as surprising to me. Like Joel is not really one for risk. You know, like he is very much risk averse, especially if it endangers those for which he cares about. Right, like he traveled across the country to save Tommy without even understanding whether Tommy was in danger. Like he did not want to take Ellie at all because of all the risk involved in that. He's, you know, for the most part, risk averse. Like, but when he understands how the stakes were behind something, he's willing to throw everything into it. And again, this is the culmination of their relationship building. And that bond is, yeah, you can possibly almost, you know, maybe save humanity, but as this father figure that he's become, he would much rather see a life where she just lives, you know, and becomes a teenager and falls in love, falls out of love, and, learns these lessons and applies these lessons that he's, you know, kind of halfway been trying to teach her about life and stuff and just experience and stuff. So again, understanding what was going to happen, I still sat there like kind of hoping, or, you know, in a way wishing that Ellie listened to Joel and just say, hey, maybe we could just turn around. Because if you think about it, the pretenses for which they're operating, or, you know, they're going to operate on Ellie, aren't really the most, I would say, democratic. Like, you know, they're both passed out. We don't know if Ellie is actually making the decision to do this. We don't know if she was, we can really safely assume that she wasn't like consulted about what would happen. Like, what is she actually sacrificing? Right? Like, that's a part of the show and the game that is never really, you know, questioned or answered, is how much agency does Ellie have in making this decision? Because I don't think either side truly gave her the autonomy to make that decision.
Yeah, so apparently, like, minors making these decisions, you know, in the hospitals in today's, that's not something that happens, right? You have to have the next, you know, a parent or guardian, next of kin, whatever. Yeah, this just completely flew out the window with Ellie. It's like, oh, she's here. We're going to operate. That's that. Very scary idea.
No doubt about it. Yeah.
But real quick, that goes back to what we've seen from every faction within this series, right? Fedra to the Fireflies to the Resistance movement in Kansas City. Like, they don't, outside of Jackson, we don't really see a democratic faction. You know, it's just, this is what needs to be done. We're going to do it. And nobody else really gets any agency in that. So I think that goes into like the ultimate, the actual ending of the season and the decision that Joel makes. And I think it gives a little bit more justification because, again, like, where's the autonomy in this decision making?
Yeah, that's a good point. But before the Fireflies attack and take Ellie and Joel to the hospital, we get a moment that I mean, now that I know the story, it makes sense to me, but I wasn't expecting this part where Joel explains to Ellie the scar that he has on his head, and that the scar he gave to himself because he was trying to commit suicide after Sarah's death. Marcy, were you kind of like, I mean, obviously it's a crucial part of the story, but like, I didn't, I mean, it makes sense that, I mean, after his daughter dies, like, and you're in this crazy, you know, post-apocalyptic world, like, killing yourself doesn't seem like you know, it seems like it may be an obvious decision for people, but I personally was kind of caught off guard that he tried to kill himself. What about you?
I kind of went both ways on it too. Kind of like you, I was like, that seems a little bit out of character for Joel, even if he was so super distraught over Sarah. I think just from what we've seen from him throughout the season is just like, he is a survivor. He will do whatever it takes to just survive. Even if he feels like he doesn't, even if he thinks he's just kind of like living or whatever, I don't think that you survive 20 years of this post-apocalyptic world without having that in you. I was surprised that he shared that with Ellie, but I think he kind of saw the need for him to open up a little bit more to her, even after he saw like everything she's been through. Like, she really needs me to be more emotionally available for her. She is just a kid. She's been through a lot. So I think he saw that was something that their relationship needed. So I like that he told her, but again, that's also a lot to put on a 14-year-old kid to, like, you know, tell them. But ultimately, I like that he was able to share that, because we don't know how many other people he shared that with. Like, Ellie might be the only person he has shared that with. We don't know if he'd shared that with Tess or with anybody else. So I thought that was just a nice moment where he was just kind of like sharing everything, whereas in the last 7 episodes he'd been sharing like very, very little. Now he was talking about Sarah and how they like to hike together and like how they did all these things. So it was very out of character for him.
Yeah, that's a good point. Because he talks about how he thinks that, Ellie would have liked Sarah and vice versa, and he says, she would have made you laugh or you would have made her laugh and all these things. Brittany, what's your take on the Joel confessing that he tried to kill himself?
With what Marcy was saying, that is a lot to put on a teenager just because you don't ever anticipate a teenager experiencing these heavy trials in life that early on. And I think that moment of vulnerability and transparency of admitting like, hey, I've struggled through dark times as well. Joel didn't go through the exact thing that Ellie experienced, but he had the dark moment of losing his child literally in his arms and him just saying like, there's no story. Sarah was dead. I didn't see the point. And as he talks about what he was about to do, he said he flinched. And that's why he ended up getting the scar on his head and not going through the actual suicide. And he says, and for whatever reason, it happened. And Ellie says, well, I'm glad it didn't. So I think Joel kind of sees it, this or that event as a way of saying, if things turned out differently, then he wouldn't be here with Ellie, of course. And you see just how much they need each other. And I think that moment of, as I said, vulnerability is just something that we as human beings, we all kind of have to be honest with ourselves, and therefore those that we say we love and care the most about, and just say, here's everything on the table. And I just think it's very, of course, very ironic that Joel is that honest in the early part of this episode and then not honest at all at the very end. So yeah. So shout out to Trisha, aka the Texas Potterhead. She joined us in the chat. Appreciate you being here. And I like how Yesenia mentions here in the chat as well. He's a dad first. I agree. Totally agree.
Yeah, by this point, he's totally like, Ellie is his daughter. Like, that's going forward. Tristan, what were you going to say?
No, I was going to say, like, suicide is usually out of character, right? Like, that is usually like the last resort, especially for someone like Joel who's so purpose driven. And like you said, like Sarah was his life. And once she died, and also that culminating with like the world ending, like what was his purpose? And I love what he said, like it wasn't time that kind of healed that wound, right? He intimates that it was, it was people, it was an actual person, it was her.
Right.
And for him, it's almost like it was worth it to get to that point, to find more purpose, to find somebody else to live for. And ultimately that's what informs his decisions with Ellie is the love that is what she's done for him. Like Ellie is she's willing to follow him anywhere and believe his obvious lies because of what he's done for her. And like, they're both equally indebted to each other. Like Ellie, Joel has given Ellie somebody to look up to, somebody to follow, somebody to guide her through life, when she really didn't have that. And that's given her new purpose, is to understand the world that she's going into, to maybe understand the world that she's, kind of been tasked with saving. She wouldn't have got that without Joel. And for Joel, Ellie has given him somebody to live for, almost like to make himself a reclamation project as a dad, one, because he wasn't really great at that at the time. And just as a person, a human being who, through his intentions of survival, has caused so much pain, right? And obviously these things have weighed on him in ways that he's still kind of paying for. But Ellie makes that kind of worth it. It's like all the pain that he went through, that he's kind of dealt with as a result, it's led him to her. and she's given him a center for which he can be. Without having that center, can you really be ashamed of the things that you've done? Right? Like seeing Ellie and seeing what she represents for him only crystallizes what he does not want to be. Right? And the hurt that he causes now is, for the most part, almost always in service of protecting Ellie. Right? So, I mean, yeah, if you're going to kill people, like, at least do it for the child that you love, and not just because you selfishly think that your survival is more important than somebody else's.
Yeah, you can tell she's had a huge impact on his life. So much so that he asked her to read some of the quote unquote shitty puns. And they're having a good time, but their fun is short lived because the Fireflies find them, they attack, they knock out Joel, they take Ellie, and then Joel wakes up in the hospital to Marlene, and she's saying, like, Ellie's being prepped for surgery. He wants to see her. They won't let him get to Ellie. And Marlene says, hey, they're doing this thing. They're gonna basically cut into her brain and discover this. That she's basically the cure. They're gonna take, whatever is in her and give it to everybody. That's how we're gonna end this. And Marlene, I guess, out of respect for what Joel has done, because she marvels at how are you able to survive? How are you able to get her from Boston all the way here to Salt Lake City? Like, that's no one else would have been able to do that. And maybe out of just respect for that, she releases Joel, even though she knows that all he cares about at this moment is getting to Ellie. She lets him go. She has a couple of guards escort him out. They're going to give him like his backpack and send him on his way. And then we get to a moment where, I mean, Joel basically turns into John Wick and goes on a legendary killing spree. He just like murks like 10 or 11 dudes while, like, I don't know if it's classical music is playing, but it's some kind of just instrumental music. And he's just headshot dudes. Like, I thought it was incredible. The scene in the stairwell where, like, he takes down the two guys and gets free. Like, he's the man. Like, I mean, Marlene should have known, right? Like, you either you take him out there or you have like 10 dudes at once take him out, like, escort him out of the building. But like, those two guys had no chance, right?
No, none whatsoever. I mean, the total protective dad just kicked in.
Yeah.
And again, I will quote Captain America, whatever it takes. And he literally took whatever he could get his hands on, including getting Ellie's knife back from the guard and taking the shotgun. I don't know anything about guns. Taking whatever weapons he can get his hands on, right? Using the knife to slice someone's throat. And I love the cinematography, seeing Joel, of course, his face, seeing the action shots, the wide shots, what have you, but then also just seeing like his boots and just how, of course, it's slow-mo, but he's just moving around, and it's almost like, oh my God, I'm going to channel Game of Thrones here. Water dancing. Okay. Like, he's just taking his time and he's being methodical, and his goal is to get to Ellie, right? We know at this point that she's being prepped for surgery. And when he does discover her, of course, she's in surgery. The anesthesia has been administered, and the doctor who Marlene was talking about said that if we perform this surgery, because we believe that there is cordyceps inside her brain that sends out a message to the other cordyceps that she's like them. That's why she's immune. That's why every time she's been bitten, it doesn't affect her whatsoever. And by extracting that cordyceps or whatever that's within her brain, because Joel says it grows from the brain, that's what they're going to use to maybe create a cure and give it out worldwide. But that means sacrificing Ellie, of course. Like, brain surgery, we know can be successful. Those with tumors, it's, it's 50-50, right? But it ultimately sounded like she was not going to make it. Like, they knew they were going to end her life in order to save the world. And that's something that was not going to fly with Joel whatsoever.
Yeah, man. I like how they explain it here in the show. In the game, it's more of a straightforward, just acceptance. In order to create this cure, create this vaccine, she's gonna die, and it's not really a extended explanation from there. So I love how the show has made it like way more plausible for like how this cure was going to be made. But yeah, Joel is just on complete rampage. Like, and you said like that dad instinct, it's the protector instinct. To where, hey, she is the mission, right? Like the mission was not getting her here so that she can, be used to create this cure, this vaccine. She's the mission. And that's all he sees. And like you could see him literally going red. Another thing, Brittany, that I love was the different, not just the wide angle, but they also go do the angle above Joel's shoulder. And that's complete gameplay. It's like, I thought they were going to follow him the whole way as he's walking through that hallway in the hospital, because that would have been exactly ripped from the game. Like that's literally how the game transitions from the cinematic cutscenes to actual gameplay, and it's so seamless a transition. It was beautiful to watch. Like say John Wick, like he was like Equalizer. But again, this is the culmination of everything that the show has told us about Joe without really showing us, right? Like the fact that Marlene chooses Joel from the jump is because he has a reputation as a guy that gets things done ruthlessly, and he's very skilled at what he does. And did I know that he was like Call of Duty on like advanced level good? Didn't know that. Don't know where this training came from, but he has 20 years of it, and he was the man on that. I loved it.
Tristan, and do they mention this in the game? This is still like a very experimental thing that they're doing, right? Like they think that this is going to work, but they haven't really tried it out. So like there could be a good chance that they would kind of risk her life for something that's going to fail.
Like, yeah, they do mention that, but the way that it's explained to Joel is like the confidence level is very high. Like, and that doctor that's performing the surgery, I think that they explain him to be like one of like the leading experts in the country, honestly. So like they're lucky to have him. So like the confidence level for everybody involved is said to be like really, really high. Just for Mr. Joel, it doesn't matter.
Well, they don't have any more too. So RIP to the doctor.
Yeah, hindsight, probably not the best decision to point blank shoot the top-notch surgeon in the head. But yeah, also Joel does not give any F's at this point. That's his baby girl. You put your hands on his baby girl, and without his consent, probably without her consent. Yeah, I'm just glad he left the nurses and the anesthesiologist alone.
Yeah, but Joel makes the save. He rescues Ellie, takes her out of the hospital. They're trying to, find a car to get out of there. And Marlene finds Joel and Ellie in the parking garage, and she, she's got her gun drawn. We see that we don't get to see exactly what happens right away, but the next thing we know, Joel and Ellie are driving away, and you're like, okay, I wonder what happened to Marlene. Well, they flash back for a second, and yeah, Marlene got also like everybody else. Marcy, what's your take on how Joel just finished the job with Marlene?
I mean, as somebody who has spent all of these episodes and has gotten really attached to Joel and to Ellie, I was like, yes, like finish her. But again, at the same time, like you have to put yourself in her shoes. Like she's doing something that is difficult for her, right? Like she knows Ellie's probably going to die when they try to do this surgery on her to hopefully like come up with a cure and save lives. She doesn't want Ellie to die. Like she already had to like kill Anna, which was difficult for her. Like I'm sure she doesn't want Ellie to die, but she knows like this is something that we have to do for the greater good. So yes, I was happy when he killed her, but you know, you could argue it the other way of like, okay, Joel, like you have to maybe think outside of like you and like your family unit that you have, and you know, see the bigger picture. Maybe this is something that could end up saving everybody else, but at what expense? I think when it's your kid, when it's your family member that you love, it's very difficult for you.
I can't help but wonder, honestly, how much has Marlene told Ellie about Ellie's mother, if at all? How Ellie came into the world? Because clearly, Marlene never told Ellie the supposed theory of, well, we believe that since birth, she's had a cordyceps grow inside her, and that's why she's immune. It wasn't until after Ellie's been bitten and unfortunately had to kill her best friend in the entire world after they were bitten that Marlene took Ellie, right? So because at this point we have no knowledge whatsoever who raised Ellie. Marlene's just maybe kind of kept tabs on her, but then for Marlene to say to Joel the first time that they all met, hey, we need you to take her cross country to get to the Fireflies hospital, what have you, because we think that she could be the cure, and withholding important information about this cure, quote unquote, and just leaving out, by the way, we're going to have to sacrifice her in order to save humanity. Like, shame on you, Marlene, in my opinion. It's, especially if you had that inkling theory, or doctors or whomever came up with this theory. Like, if there's no real 100% assurance when you go into any kind of surgery that someone's going to make it out okay, right? Like, there's always risks. And when you talk about a delicate surgery such as what Ellie was going to undergo, unless there was like 1000% chance that she was going to come out okay and not have anything screwed up about her, then I say whatever. But Marlene, my girl, if you knew Ellie was the cure and you raised her to be a sacrificial lamb, shame on you. Shame on you. You deserve what happened to you. That's all I'm going to say.
And that's what makes it, I think, easier for Marlene to ultimately sacrifice Ellie. Is she really has not, she hasn't had that bonding experience that Joel did. Like, she's kind of, like you said, kept tabs on her from afar. But again, it's not your child, and you haven't gone through the fire that it takes to view a kid as your child, right? So like, yeah, she has a connection through her mother, and I think Marlene has the best intentions with Ellie in using her immunity to, you know, save humanity, like this greater purpose. But in doing that, like I said, it's easier to do that when you don't have that super personal bond. Like, you waited basically 14 years to show Ellie that you know who she is and that she's special and that she has this greater purpose. But yeah, like, Marlene and Joel are not making the same decision, right? Marlene's, the decision on the table is save Ellie or save humanity, but they're coming from it from two different lenses. Marlene has a much more broader view of Ellie and what, you know, her immunity represents. So she can kind of take a step back, see the forest from the trees, and make that decision. Joel, he doesn't have that luxury because he's built up these super personal bonds. Like, this is like a second daughter to him. So you can't. So I guess the ultimate, dialogue is going to come from this finale. You know, it's going to be centered around that decision. But I want to make that very clear that they're not making that decision through the same perspective. And it's impossible.
Right.
It's nearly impossible for Joel to see this through Marlene's perspective and vice versa, because they just had different experiences with Ellie. And Joel has seen a part of Ellie that Marlene will never see, obviously, RIP. But she'll never see that because of her ultimate decision to like take a step back and like keep tabs on Ellie instead of actually having her as a ward and being her guardian.
I think it would also be interesting, Tristan, to know more of their lives before like the whole pandemic started, because from this, it might seem like Marlene has always been more of like an idealistic type of person of like, yes, like we've got to save humanity. Like we've got to do this one thing because it's going to pay off for everybody else. Whereas Joel might have been more of like a cynical type of personality to where he might be like, okay, yeah, like why do I have to like risk this thing to like maybe save somebody else? Like it would have been interesting to know more of like who they were beforehand, to know like how that could also shape their worldviews now.
I agree with that. I mean, even when Ellie met with, oh, I can't think of her name. Was it Maria when they made it to Jackson? And Maria says she had been a former district attorney, and she was also still trying to persuade Ellie to be mindful about Joel and what his intentions were and things like that. I'm like, wait a minute, you don't know her. Like, you don't know them. You don't know what they've gone through. Like, don't step in someone's life like that and just say, hey, by the way, I think this guy is bad news, when you just met him yourself and you're going based on maybe what the brother has said, but also the brother's done some shady things and maybe he's trying to deflect. You can go back and watch our pod review on that. But you know what I'm saying? Like with Marlene, again, you're observing from a distance. And if you really wanted Ellie to fight for the cause, maybe you shouldn't have kept her in a Fedra school. Maybe you could have raised her, and maybe she could have been part of the Fireflies, and maybe things would have been different.
Yeah.
Just saying.
I think that Marlene just didn't want to be that attached. You know, that's because as Anna at the beginning is dying, she tells Marlene, like, you know, she doesn't tell her like you need to take care of Ellie. She says find someone to take care of her, or you know, to take care of her or to raise her or whatever. And I think, you know, after what Marlene has to do, I think she doesn't want to be attached to Ellie the way that she would be. You know, if they were just, you know, if Anna's her best friend and it's just regular world times, like, you know, she'd be in the kid's life. But given what's happened, she doesn't want to be that attached. And then obviously when you're in this Firefly organization, like they have a purpose, you know, they're trying to find a way to end this. And you know, it's everyone's has different perspectives. I mean, like the decision that Joel makes from his perspective, it's the right decision for him, right? Now, for probably everyone else in the world's perspective, it's like, no, it's the wrong decision. Like you know, you had like if you have to sacrifice a person to save the world, then you know, on paper you go, well, yeah, you make that call. But if it's one of your people, then it's not an easy decision. So I think that the way they played that out was pretty masterful.
Like Craig Mazin said, every good and bad thing that's ever happened, 9 times out of 10 was motivated by love. Right. And I think Marlene's intentions are pure. And I think her decision is motivated by love, you know, love of humanity, love of, you know, the purpose that Ellie was kind of born with, you know, whether she chose it or not, Joel is motivated by love. Like, you know, Kathleen was motivated by love. David, in his own sick, twisted way, was motivated by love. It's just love of self and love of selfish desires, right? So like we can, like I said, we can debate back and forth about what Joel should have done, but we have to be able to put ourselves in those perspectives and understand that experiences always motivate decisions. Every decision that we make on a day-to-day basis is based on like some data, some, you know, previously experienced data, whatever. So the more I think about it, honestly, the more I'm like, I probably would have done the same thing that Joel would have done. I may have tried to talk her out of it more before they actually went through with it, but I do understand Ellie, like at least saying, hey, we have to go through with this in some type of way, because everything that's happened to me has kind of led up to this point, right? So I get both sides.
So I want to pose a question to everyone here and those in the chat. Why didn't Joel tell Ellie the truth? Why did he create this story about how, oh, well, they were going to find a cure with you, but they found that there are others that are immune, and they've given up on a cure because there's dozens. There's so many other people. Why wouldn't he just be straight up about what happened and say, "Hey, don't know how much they told you about your surgery, but they were basically going to kill you in order to save the rest of the world"?
No, it's a good question. I mean, I think it is because Ellie Ellie knows, like, it kind of goes back to earlier in the episode whenever, he's telling her, "Hey, we don't have to do this." And she's like, "No, no, no, we have to do this. Like, there's no halfway. We have to go through with this." She believes she has a purpose, and she's right. I mean, who knows? Maybe the surgery or whatever wouldn't have worked, and she would have died or whatever. But I think she knows that, like, there's a reason why she was, transported across country to get there. And I think she just thinks that, like, I don't know that she knows that she's gonna have to sacrifice that she would be sacrificed in order to create the cure. But I think she knows that, like, it's not bullshit. Like, she was meant to do this. And then for him to say, "Oh no, yeah, there's lots of other people," and yeah, we had to leave the hospital because Raiders attacked, and I had to get everybody out. I had to get you out of there. And she's like, "What about everybody else?" "Oh yeah, they all died, and it's real sad, but we had to leave." And she's like, "Well, where's my clothes?" And
That was a
he's
very
just,
low-key moment of you,
yeah,
Justin. Yes, very sad. Anyway,
right. She's like, "Where's my clothes?" He's like, "Oh, we didn't have time. We had to go because the Raiders showed up, and yeah, we're moving on." Like, I don't know, Marcy. What do you think about that?
I think he thinks if she would have known the truth, she still would have wanted to go through with it, knowing that she might die, knowing that it may not work. One, because again, she may feel she has a purpose, but two, after all of the really hard things that she's been through on this journey, to then turn around and not do it, I think she would have felt like, I did all of this for nothing. I went through all of this to just turn around and just say, like, no thanks. And also, like, she's been through a lot of trauma, so she might be in the headspace to be like, well, like, even if I die, that's okay, because I'm having all of these very, very difficult experiences and emotions and everything kind of tied back to this trauma, that maybe I really don't care if I don't wake up from this surgery. Like, that would be fine, because I maybe would not rather want to live with this trauma. I think he also thinks it's a lot to put on a 14-year-old, which it definitely is. And sometimes you tell lies to protect others or to think that you're protecting others, but then when the truth comes out, it ends up backfiring, and the person is not only upset that you didn't let them do whatever it was that they needed to do, but they're doubly upset because you lied about it. So obviously, I'm assuming it's going to backfire. I haven't played the game. I don't know what's happening in game 2, but I don't think anything good is going to come of it, because it's going to feel like a betrayal.
That's I would say that's an astute observation.
Yeah, I feel like season 2, she's gonna find out the lies. I mean, I think she already knows, but I think she's gonna not be okay with it in season 2.
She absolutely knows. She can feel it. The bond that they built has been so symbiotic that, I mean, I was rewatching episode 5, when Joel is up in the house and the infected are pouring through, streets of Kansas City, and Joel and Ellie are really pretty much communicating with a look, right? So you can see, like, the bond that they have, like, they're able to kind of see within each other. And so they know when each other is mad or distant, and, but I think ultimately I agree with everything that Marcy said. I agree with everything that Justin and Brittany said. The last part of it is shame, right? Not just the shame from, taking away Ellie's, in a way, taking away her agency and making that decision that I don't think that she really truly got to make, but shame in the way that he protected her, because he's been trying to shield her so much from, like, this violence, and he's been ashamed of the time that he's had to use violence, even in service of protecting her. And if Ellie knew for sure, like clearly knew what he had to do to get her out of that hospital, that's another level of shame. Like the flashback that he's having of like finishing off Marlene, I don't think it's one of just like, I don't think at any point he's looking at that and kind of rejoicing in the fact that he did it. I think he hates the fact that he did it. And I think he knows Ellie would hate the fact that he did it because Ellie does not have the luxury of understanding what the stakes were. Like the fact that she most likely would have died through this surgery, or understanding that, you know, Joel was being held at gunpoint in a hospital room. Like, you know, she doesn't see that. All she knows is that there was a purpose and she didn't get a chance to fulfill it. You know, Joel definitely has that perspective, but like he really did some violent shit, like super violent shit, you know, like Equalizer shit. And that is something that, again, Ellie's his center, and that center, she becomes his moral center. And he is acutely ashamed, even in his conversations with Tommy, the way that he knows Maria's looking at him because she knows about his past and who he is and the things that he's done. He does not want people to see him like that, especially if you love somebody and you care about that person, you don't want them to see you at your worst. And Ellie is his de facto daughter. And would you want your daughter to know that you pretty much murked the entire hospital, you know, and on 3 different floors in order to save her? So the last part of that, I agree. He absolutely, you know, is ashamed about lying and all these things, but it's a shame of being the violent monster when he needs to be in order to protect people.
No, I understand that. And I understand for him in many ways, it's kind of making up for the fact that he couldn't save Sarah all those years ago. And Sarah didn't get to live beyond, I'm guessing, her 14th, 15th year of life. And he wants Ellie to be able to have a life, whatever that life may bring her. And Marlene did call out about how what's going to happen when she gets older, when she leaves you, like when you die, like, you know, the world's still going to be basic shit because you decided, Joel, that she was better off not saving humanity, basically. And I'm pretty sure that that hit pretty hard for him, but at the same time, he's going to do what he feels is best, and that is to protect Ellie from the world and people, because he did say people are the worst, are your worst enemy here. It's not the clickers, it's not the bloaters, it's not the infected at all. It's people. And obviously this is going to play out into season 2 without a doubt. She's going to somehow address it to him in one way or another. I just don't feel personally, and maybe this is from my personal experience, 14 was a tough age for me. And I feel like, yes, Ellie was told she's special. There's something about her. She can help create a cure. But that's a lot of weight to carry as a 14-year-old. And a 14-year-old whose brain has not fully developed, cordyceps or not, that's a very difficult decision for any 14-year-old to make, to say, hey, I'm going to be the cure, but I need to know all the facts, right? I don't think it should have just weighed solely on her. She needed to have had someone who was looking out for her, and that someone is Joel.
And you know, the last scene is, I think, is a very powerful way to end the episode. So their car breaks down. They're in Wyoming, and they're like, it's like a 5-hour hike to basically back to Jackson. And Joel's like, "Hey, we can do this. We've done it so many times. No big deal." And at that point, Ellie makes Joel promise that everything he said about the Fireflies was true. And he says, "I swear." And then she says, "Okay." And then it just goes to black. And I think that the name of the show is called The Last of Us. Like I said from the top, if this were a series finale, it'd be like a perfect ending. It was a perfect ending to the season finale. I can't wait for season 2, but I think it was just like, what a great way to end this season. Marcy, what do you think about the ending?
I agree with you. I think if they would have just ended it like that, I would have said, okay, like now I can assume that they make it safely to Wyoming and they make it to Jackson and, you know, they meet up with Tommy and the rest of the commune and everything is hunky dory. And then I don't have to think about, oh no, but there's a season 2 and there's a lot more pain and a lot more drama that's coming. So I would have loved it if they just kind of like wrapped it up. But I think it was a good season ender because it didn't end on a cliffhanger, which I hate, even though like they knew that, you know, they were going to come back for season 2. I like that they didn't just end it maybe like with Joel like waking up at the hospital or like, you know, shooting everybody in the hospital before he's able to save Ellie. I'm glad that they kind of like wrapped it up and then like kind of leave a clean slate for us to pick up season 2, hopefully in the next couple years, I guess, maybe like within 1 to 2 years. But no, it was a good way to just kind of end it, just cut to black. Very Sopranos, I guess.
And there definitely was a cliffhanger there. It's just really subtle. Ellie and Joel's relationship from going forward is going to be like really complex and complicated. And I think that's the cliffhanger. It's like,
Yeah.
how much does Ellie believe him, right? And how much will that inform how their relationship continues to grow and evolve or devolve in some type of ways. Yeah, I feel you, Justin. Yes, in theory, that would be a perfect way to end that series. Oh man, I just know too much, and it, like there's so much drama, you know, there, and there's so much potential for so much drama, and there's so much that Ellie still needs to learn and experience, and she will learn and experience, and it's only going to bring the story. It's only going to raise the story to a much higher level. Yeah. So yeah, in theory, yeah, it'd be a perfect way. But yeah, this ride is not nowhere close to ending, I would say.
Yeah, and I'm happy. I'm happy about that. I want more of it. I thought it was great. Brittany,
Go
ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh, you go ahead.
No, I was gonna say like I don't know if we're gonna talk about like what we thinking about for season 2. I'm actually, the more I think about it, I have no clue what season 2 is gonna look like. Because I think this is
lies. Don't be like Joel and lie to us.
No, I'm serious. Like, if this was a 2-season series, then I could tell you exactly how season 2 is going to go. I think this is going to be 3 seasons. I think they're going to end up doing more because it's just so much that they can do with it. I think 4 at the most, but I don't think season 2 is going to be 1-to-1 with game 2 because there's a jump. There's a 4-year difference between the end of game 1 and the beginning of game 2. Ellie is 14 at the end of game 1. At the beginning of game 2, she's 18. There's a big maturity gap there. There's a lot of things that she's experienced in between game 1 and game 2. There's a whole life that she's kind of built. Her and Joel have built in Jackson. So I'm interested in seeing, because this is where D&D and Game of Thrones, this is where like they kind of to shift backwards, is when the source material wasn't 1-to-1 with what they were trying to do with the story. Because of what I know about game 2, I seriously doubt that the show is going to follow game 2 in season 2. I doubt it. It's HBO. It wouldn't shock me if they did, but I don't think they're going to do it. I think there's a lot of potential for them to like expand the story in season 2 and then bring it back together in season 3 to have that match game 2.
The expansions worked so well in the first season. It really had. I mean, every time they deviated, it was like for the better. I mean, every deviation that I knew about that you told us about or that I've heard in other ways, it seemed like it was like it just made the story even better and enhanced the game. So that makes a lot of sense.
Every deviation is about the people,
right?
Like personifying the people and like who they are. Even the the so-called antagonists and villains. It's like giving them more weight so that we care about them. And it, like I said, there's so much potential for them to do more of that in season 2.
Yeah, that's a good prediction. Brittany, before we talk about season 1 highlights, I wanted to get your thoughts on the final scene of the episode. What did you think about how it played out?
It was a total cliffhanger for me. I mean, I feel like even without the knowledge of there being additional seasons coming our way, I definitely feel like this was something of, oh shit, like she knows that he's lying to her, right? And for whatever reason that she's decided to not call him out in that moment is beyond me, but it feels like, oh no, this is just too good to not continue the story. Like we need to have more development and see when that moment comes to pass when she decides to say, I know you lied to me about Salt Lake City. I know blah 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 blah, whatever reasons. It was a great ending though. And I wanted to share something that Melissa said here in the chat that one, she Ellie knows. She shared her story about Riley, and that may have been the opportunity for Joel to come clean about what he did, and then he didn't. So that being said, total cliffhanger for me. I am very excited to see what season 2 may bring. Interesting when you said D&D, that made my heart skip a little bit, because when I say we, they started deviating from source material because it no longer was available to them. Just went downhill. Okay. I'm just going to say it. Season 6 of Game of Thrones was perfect. Can't say the rest. Same for the rest. So just say
7 was good. 7 was good.
7 was okay, except for Big Dumb Plan. That's a different story.
No, I didn't like that either. But yeah.
But I'm just hoping if we're not going to do a 1-to-1 and we get these expansion stories, make it make sense. Leave those little breadcrumbs that we've gotten throughout, this season, and make it make sense in the end. Make it pay off, and I'll be happy.
The big difference is in this compared to Game of Thrones, Neil Druckmann, who came up with this story, he's very much involved in this series, and I think he'll make the decisions that'll make it better. If not just basically adapting the game straight up, which probably wouldn't be a bad idea, he's going to make it better, like we saw in season 1. And Melissa has a good point here about HBO. Apparently, they're going to drop the HBO in the name of the streamer and just be called Max. I'm not sure when that's going to happen, or it's been rumored for a little while. That is really dumb. And yes, they are cutting things, and they're, in theory, wanting to go cheap. But I think there's going to be a few shows like House of the Dragon and like Last of Us that will still get the budget that they need and deserve, because HBO does still mean something. The channel itself. I mean, the letters mean a lot. There's a quality to HBO that I think that hopefully the people that run Discovery and gave us, all these like rando reality shows and flipping houses and flipping burgers or whatever's on those channels, maybe they, ease up and let us keep our prestige TV. And
I still hear the Sopranos theme song after the HBO part, like I still hear.
Right.
I'll never not hear "Got Yourself a Gun" ever.
I just think about the Game of Thrones song, because that song, like when that song comes on, I mean, I just get so excited. It's just like a sporting event's about to happen. Like it's what a great.
I'll say that Neil Druckmann and Craig Mazin have demonstrated more writing ability in one season than Benioff and Weiss did in 8 seasons. So I have full confidence. Again, if you're able to tell this story and make it so emotionally cathartic in a video game, I trust them on a television show.
Non-gamer here, and I still forget that this whole series is based on a game. So
that's something I was going to talk about in the close. But I mean, the fact that if you didn't know this is a video game, you wouldn't necessarily know. I mean, they tell you a lot, but like if they didn't tell you, you'd go, "This is just a great show." Like there's it could be a video game, it could be whatever, it could be a movie, but it's so well done. But I just want to say one thing: in defense of Benioff and Weiss, and there's no reason for me to defend them. I will say that while they didn't do a lot of great writing, maybe they did do a lot of great editing the first 5 seasons, because they cut a lot of stuff out of that book that's in them. And now I haven't read the books, but I know the books are, lengthy books. There's a lot of stuff about food. There's a lot of characters that maybe wouldn't have worked on the show. So I think they did a very good job of like paring down the story and making it digestible for an audience. And obviously, I mean, they were very successful. So I just want to say that, like, they weren't
it's
good.
visually stunning.
Oh
Like,
yeah,
the
of course.
visual production is,
It looked
like,
amazing.
top-notch.
Yeah, it looked amazing. So, but back to The Last of Us. Let's talk about season 1 highlights. Start with you, Marcy. So whenever you think back on The Last of Us season 1, what's the first couple things you're going to think of, like, that pop into your head?
Bill and Frank is probably going to be number one for me. I think episode 3 is just probably my overall favorite one, just because all of the emotions that really brought up and how beautifully like that episode was made. And it was a nice just kind of respite from all the like kind of craziness that we see the first 2 episodes, and then like kind of tease us up for like the rest of the season, which is again filled with lots of drama and things. It was a nice little capsule of happiness with, just some sadness at the end. So that would be like one of my number one highlights. Also highlight is just them seeing Jackson and one, like Joel knowing that his brother is okay, because that had been something that had been weighing on him a lot. But 2, seeing that there is some part of society that is thriving even amongst like everything else that had gone to shit. So I really liked seeing how they were able to just come up with some semblance of civilization and society. And then just kind of seeing Joel's progression, warming up to Ellie, being a little bit more emotionally available, I thought was great. So I think those are my highlights.
Brittany, what about you? What are some things that you'll never forget about this show?
The motherfucking broccoli face. Like, good Lord. No, did not like that. It's not a highlight, but they did create the special effect makeup very well. They achieved the effect that they wanted to give to the audience, and that was so that we'll say the special effects makeup is a highlight.
Yeah.
No, I think with the storytelling, and again, as a non-gamer, I forget that this is a video game. So I think if you tell a good story in whatever amount of time you want to give each episode, I think for me is a huge win. And the pacing of it has also been extremely well done. I don't feel like there's been fluff, which for me is great, because I don't think in any one of these episodes, even on a rewatch, I will pick up my phone to start just, scrolling and catching up on social media or whatever. So no, the fact that it held my attention is a huge highlight for me. The casting is top notch. Every single performance we've been given from our main actors and even our side characters, if you will, they've all performed their characters at 100%. And I haven't rewatched this episode, but the one for Sam and Henry was gut wrenching. That one was my favorite for a bit, until we saw the level of Ellie badassness that just came blasting through our screens. She is forever my hero. I don't care what she does. Joel as well. I'm here for the toxicity. I'm here for the violence. I'm here for, don't judge me, people. I'm here to see whatever happens between these two and how they survive, because I don't feel I've been so invested in a show as of late as I am with this show. And that's coming from someone who had no intention of watching this show whatsoever.
Yeah, after episode 1, you were going to bail, but
I was. No, you're
yeah.
Absolutely right. I was really just like, nope, I'm peace out, y'all. I can't do this. I just can't. And then I gave it a chance, and it's like, oh, I'm here. I'm invested. Real quick, I got to share this from Melissa. Kudos to the showrunners for using Depeche Mode in 2 episodes. Melissa, I was about to wear my Depeche Mode tour shirt that we went to. I was literally this close. And I don't know. I just chose Metallica instead. But anyway, I was this close. I should have worn Depeche Mode. Yeah. Anyway, Tristan, your highlights.
They're 2 different versions too.
Yep.
Yeah.
Same song. Man.
Very, very true.
So my three biggest takeaways, biggest highlights. One was the thing that I thought was going to make the show a success from when they first announced it was I felt like they were going to deviate from the game in specific ways that would be perfectly adapted for television. So personifying a lot of the MPG characters or NPC characters, sorry. Giving more weight to like characters that we know, like Tess, and like providing more of an emotional runway for them to be characters that we care about. That was my biggest highlight, and that's what makes the Bill and Frank episode so great. Is that's not something that's in the game. That's something that they intentionally put in there because it tells a larger story about Joel and Ellie, and just about like the broader themes of this series, which is like protection and family and saving who you can save, like when you can save them. That's highlight number one. Highlight number two are like the one-to-one game to show experiences. Just off top, the premiere, the episode 1 where you're seeing them driving through Austin and seeing the house on fire and seeing them go through the streets and kind of see this outbreak from day one. The giraffe scene, and then the finale. Like, there's so many things throughout this series. It's like, man, like you put yourself in the mindset, like Joel being at the top of the house, having to, snipe people from afar to protect Sam, Ellie, and Henry. Like, there's just so many things that, like Game of Thrones, that you see these things in your head when you're reading the book. It's like, I have to see this played out, right? Or House of Dragon, I have to see this played out on film. And like, just like we talked about with Game of Thrones, like the visual production only enhances what we see in the game. And that takes a lot of effort. It takes a lot of like just elite talent, but they pulled that off. And lastly, just the performances of Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey. Like, both of them, at least in my opinion, like elevated themselves status-wise in the acting world. Pedro has already been known for like these iconic characters already. In his short stint as like a A-list, or I don't know if he's A-list, but like A whatever list actor. Bella Ramsey has one role that we care about, and it's iconic, but it doesn't necessarily make her a star, right? Lyanna Mormont is iconic in the Game of Thrones world, right? And it put her on the map. Like, her performance as Ellie Williams is going to make her a star.
She answered the call.
She
answered the call.
She answered the call. But like their performances, again, rewatching all of season 1 today, really crystallized just how, like, just the different ways that they fucking kill it. Like Pedro with the facial expressions, him being able to jump between different emotions, oftentimes in the same sentence, right? Like, I forget, it was one scene where he kind of lowers his head because you can tell that he's like remembering Sarah and like the trauma that they went through. And then he immediately goes right back to like, okay, this is the mission, and kind of like that straightforward tone. And like, that's just amazing. And Bella Ramsey, from like episode 5 on, like, she just raises her level in each episode. 6 is my favorite of this series. Was it 7? 6 is my favorite of the series. And again, it features iconic moments from the game, and it takes a lot of pressure. So they talk about the pressure to like match the game experience, and they did it. So those are my 3 highlights. This has been one of the best seasons, for debut seasons of television in my lifetime. I can't wait for season 2, man. I'm excited.
Yeah. Y'all put everything so well. Like, y'all touched on y'all covered all the bases. Like, that was awesome. My thing is like, I try to avoid hyperbole. I try not to be a prisoner of the moment, but this is by far the best ever video game adaptation ever. And I mean, it's not close, but like, there's a lot, and I mentioned this in our first episode of the season, that there's a lot of video game adaptations that are coming at us, because I mean, video games are they've been a big part of all of our lives, I think, in some ways, but video game culture is, some of these video games, like Call of Duty, it yearly it makes more money than like the highest grossing movie of the year, or it's like on the same level. This is big business. Video games have been for a long time, or recently, like more so than ever. And so we're gonna see a lot of these adaptations. Like, for example, like like there's a Mario Brothers movie coming out in a few weeks, and I think it's actually be pretty cool. It's gonna do pretty well. But there was a Mario Brothers movie back in the 90s, early 90s, and it was real bad. And
I
like
like that movie.
Nintendo doesn't want you to remember that, right? Like, so think about like, and Mario has been a huge character since the 80s, right? But like it's taken them, and I'm not sure, I haven't seen this new movie yet, but I think this movie is going to do very well. It's taken them like 35 years to like finally do this right, And this show, like with Last of Us, like this is a very popular game. I don't have the same connection that Tristan does to it, but I know a little bit about it. My brother, he's played the games. I think one of the games I got him for either his birthday or for Christmas. The first game was on PS3. The second one is on PS4. Now they're on, PS5. They've been remastered and all that cool stuff. But like, so I knew a little bit about it. But to me, to have a very popular video game, and then now have a award-winning TV show from that video game is a very impressive feat. And like they pulled it off. And yeah, the characters are great. The actors are great. I mean, Bill and Frank that episode, and Henry and Sam that episode. I mean, they're just like only 9 episodes. This show like has really like I understand why this video game was so popular, even though I've never played the game, and I knew a little bit about it, obviously, but I never played it. But I get it. Like I mean, what an accomplishment what they did with this season. And I'm looking forward to what we have coming up in season 2, whenever that might be. Probably in 2025, I would guess. But yeah, I mean they killed it this year, and y'all obviously I think everyone said it way better than I just said it right now. But yeah, it was a great season. Any other final thoughts from y'all?
I just like to say thank you to Pedro Pascal for sharing the story about how your nephews were so into The Last of Us that they were so thrilled when you were offered the job. The Last of Us, you better take the job. It's a great interview from Graham Norton show. I absolutely love that little clip there. So, when people know, right? When they know, they know.
Yep.
And now Pedro Pascal knows. And now the world knows. So it's all the better for it. Let's just hope it really, like the cordyceps shit, really doesn't happen in real life. At least not in our lifetime.
Yeah, no, we're in trouble. We wouldn't survive.
Yeah.
They explained it so well that you think that it's a possibility.
I know. It's scary.
Yeah.
That's how
Listen, the opening scene where John Hannah was speaking about it, right? In episode 1, and then in episode 2, when you had the oh gosh, I can't think of mycologist and saying bomb this place. I was like, oh shit, we're not making it out alive. So yes, I'm a believer.
It already happens with ants though. Like that's like a type of cordyceps already happens to ants. So who knows? I mean, I wouldn't survive. I would be the first one to be like, where do I, like, what lake do I jump into? Like, I'm not about this life.
Listen, y'all, and the fact that there's a fungi named after Keanu Reeves, we're fucked when that happens. When John Wick has his own fungi, we're fucked.
So it's hard to follow that, Brittany. Like you caught me here to laugh. So now you know what we thought about the season finale of The Last of Us. We want to know what you think about it. And Brittany, how can people tell us what they thought about the episode?
Well, we do appreciate those who joined us for our first ever instant reaction pod. This has been fun. This has been great. It's been late because it's also the first day for the time change, but hey, we're making it. We're going to, make it through. But we do encourage everyone to join our live stream. So shout out to Melissa, shout out to Yesenia, and shout out to Trisha, who joined us in the chat today. We appreciate you being here. If you're watching the replay, leave a comment down below. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, and don't forget to like this video. It helps out our algorithm greatly. We also are on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Don't forget to search us at Watchers Basement. You can use hashtag Watchers Basements to help grow our audience. Tell your friends, coworkers, family members, people on the street. Shout it to the world about the Watchers in the Basement, y'all. And lastly, you can tune into our audio podcast available on Apple, Google, and Spotify, thanks to, it's no longer anchor.fm. It's actually been bought by Spotify. So thanks to Spotify for making this happen. Don't forget to give us a 5-star rating.
Yeah, Brittany, it's no longer Anchor. Now it's called Spotify for podcasters. So
It's too
just
mouthy.
rolls off the tongue. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah. But thanks, Brittany. Appreciate it. So for Brittany, for Tristan, for Marcy, this is Justin saying thank you for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time. Have a good evening.